I'm calling this meeting of the Phoenix AMA Groundwater Users Advisory Council to order. Today is March 22nd, 2022, and the time is 1:01 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually. I am Frank Fairbanks, Vice Chair. Would the other members please present and introduce themselves? Maybe Dave, you could start.
Thank you, Frank, and good afternoon. This is Dave Roberts and from SRP.
Rory? Are you there?
He's on mute. He needs to unmute his.
Hey, Rory. Okay. And Stephen.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Steve Bales here, farmer from Buckeye.
A good place to be from and a good place to live in.
Yes, it is.
Okay. We have a quorum. Would ADWR staff members please introduce themselves?
Good afternoon. This is Kennedy Shepard, Groundwater Users Advisory Council Coordinator.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenna Norris.
Good afternoon. This is Amanda Long. I am the AMA Planning Manager.
Good afternoon. Nick Rodendo, Industrial Planning, Active Management Area.
Hello, Rachel Von Nexton, Water Resources Engineer for the Colorado River Management Section. Good afternoon. This is Colette Pansini, Municipal Planner in the AMA section.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This is Natalie Mast. I'm the AMA Director responsible for management plans and planning.
Glad you're on, Natalie. Now, if there's no further staff introductions, if any audience members are interested in introducing themselves, please type your name and affiliation into the chat box. We'll give you a minute to find the chat box and type in your name and affiliation. You don't have to do that, but if you'd like to, that's fine too. Okay. Let's start with agenda item 2, webinar logistics, and Kennedy Shepard will handle that, or at least get us started. Kennedy?
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let's just go over a few webinar logistics before we get started. We do ask that members of the public to please keep your phone muted during the meeting. This helps us reduce audio feedback. But if you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat box. We will read and address them at the end of each presentation. If you would like to address the council, the call to public is your time to do so. This meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to our website and YouTube page once WebEx generates the final recording. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please contact our help desk and their information is on the screen. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so Kennedy will handle that as well. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
We'll move to item 3, GUAC web page updates, which will be handled by Kennedy again.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So just a few things. We added some updates. So this is our website, and if you're on the GUAC meeting page and you scroll down past our members, you'll see that we've added all of our previous meetings. Here you can see the title of them, the date that we had them, along with an easier access to the agenda and all of our meeting materials. You can also filter by year, so you can look at any meetings from 2018 and easily access any of the materials we spoke about. And if you click on the title, you'll be able to see our recordings there as well. So I just wanted to bring that attention to members of the public and the council. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Kennedy on the web page? Hearing none, let's move to item agenda 4, election of officers pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes 45-421. The GUAC shall elect its members, chairperson and a vice chairperson for terms of 2 years. As I understand it, the newly elected chair and vice chair would assume their office at our next meeting. And at this point, let me open the discussion for elections. Kennedy, any discussion from staff on this item?
Good afternoon, Mr. Fairbanks. This is Kyle. No discussion other than to say that you're correct. The new chair and vice chair, whoever that may be, will take over those responsibilities for the next meeting.
So I'm going to, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead, David.
I just wanted to nominate someone who's remarkable at running meetings, and that would be Frank Fairbanks, or chair.
Well, thank you. That's very nice.
You're welcome. You have a lot of experience and you do a very good job.
Been there and done that. Are there any further what we need is there a second to the nomination?
Bill seconds that nomination.
Okay. Any further nominations?
Mr. Chairman, this is Stephen Cleveland, and I'm just notifying everyone I'm on the phone with you.
Welcome, Steve. Any further nominations? Go ahead, David.
Frank, I would like to nominate Stephen Bales for vice chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
No second, so we'll have to move on.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
That worked good.
Any further
I
nominations?
think I seconded before he had a chance to deny his opportunity.
Okay, that sounds great. And it's all recorded so we can put a stopwatch to the whole thing and find out. If there's no further nominations, we'll put the items to vote. I guess we can vote, since there are no other nominations, we can vote them together. All in favor of the nominations for chair and vice chair signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing none, the vote is 5-0 for Fairbanks as chair and Rory as vice chair. Let's move on to item 5.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. We had just.
Excuse me?
I'd like to ask a point of clarification. I wrote down the motion as Stephen Bales as vice chair.
Then that's correct. Let me correct that. Mr. Fairbanks is chair and Stephen Bales is vice chair. Mental slip.
All right, thank you.
Good job, Kyle.
Good catch. Item 5, Agenda 5, Colorado River update. Rachel will provide an update on current Colorado River conditions. Rachel?
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the council. So we're going to start with a brief review of Colorado River system reservoir status. These numbers reflect the levels as of March 16th. For the smaller upper basin reservoirs, beginning at the upper right and moving down, we have Fontenelle at 44%, Flaming Gorge at 78%, Blue Mesa at 29%, followed by Morrow Point at 94%, and finally Navajo at 50%. As of the 16th, Lake Powell was at an elevation of 3524.83 feet, with a storage of 5.916 million acre feet, or 24% of capacity. Lake Mead was at an elevation of 1064.30 feet, with a storage of 8.753 million acre feet, or 34% of capacity. From checking Reclamation's website this morning, Powell and Mead elevations have only moved approximately 0.66 feet, and 0.86 feet, respectively. Looking at the reservoir system as a whole, we currently have roughly 21.185 million acre-feet in storage, or 35% of system capacity. This is approximately a 5.48 million acre-feet decrease from this time last year. You may have seen the recent news coverage of the fact that Lake Powell dipped below the critical elevation of 3525 last week. This elevation was expressly defined in the Upper Basin Drought Contingency Plan and is important because it provides a 35-foot buffer in Lake Powell elevation for action to be taken to prevent from falling below minimum power pool. This dip in elevation is expected to be temporary. This is the historic and forecasted water year unregulated inflow into Lake Powell. The lighter blue bars show the historic water year unregulated inflow, and the 30-year average from 91 to 2020 is 9.60 million acre-feet. The right side of the graph shows Reclamation's March 24-month study volumes for the min in red, most in green, and max in dark blue. The minimum probable forecast is 5.24 million acre-feet, 55% of the 30-year average. The most probable forecast is 6.58 million acre-feet, 69% of the 30-year average, and the maximum probable forecast is 9.49 million acre-feet, 99% of the 30-year average. Here we have the snow water equivalent chart for above Lake Powell. The 1991 to 2020 median is shown in purple, and we have our current year, 2022, in blue. Included is 2021 for comparison. 2021 was the third worst April through July unregulated inflow at 1.85 million acre-feet. As of March 17th, current snow water equivalent is at 87% of seasonal median. As you track the blue line, you can see that we've had very wet and very dry periods of weather in water year 2022. October was wet, then November through the first week of December was dry. The last 3 weeks of December until early January, we had a lot of storms, where you can see that steeper incline. However, without any significant snowfall in the remainder of January and February, and thus nothing of note in March, we will likely see this blue line start to taper off. Here we have the Lake Powell end-of-month elevations from Reclamation's most recent 24-month study. We have the probable max in blue, most probable in green, and probable min in red. We also have the additional illustrated traces from the CRIMS ESP projection, which are seen in the individual gray lines. These individual traces and model runs are produced by Reclamation to provide additional information about risk and uncertainty for near-term planning horizons and help us to see that there can be traces below the probable min and above the probable max. I would also like to note that the probable max is from the February 24-month study, whereas the most probable and probable min are from the March 24-month study. Reclamation has decided to only produce the probable max in January, April, August, and October moving forward. Therefore, it was not run in March. The first vertical line marks the end of calendar year 2022. The end of calendar year 2022 most probable elevation projection is 3520.08 feet with a probable minimum of 3505.84 feet. The second yellow line marks the end of calendar year 2023. The end of calendar year 2023 most probable elevation projection is at 3533.37 feet with a probable minimum of 3499.31 feet. In water year 2022, the scheduled release from Lake Powell is 7.48 million acre-feet. 350,000 of the release has been held back from January through April, but the current adjusted release pattern makes up this volume with increases running June through September of this year. In water year 2023, the probable min release from Lake Powell is 7.0 million acre-feet, and the most probable release is 7.54 million acre-feet. Now we are looking at Lake Mead end-of-month elevation projections from the most recent 24-month study. If you saw the February 24-month study, you will note that the March study has shifted downward, reflecting a decrease in the forecast of approximately 1.5 million acre-feet of unregulated inflow into Powell. The end of calendar year 2022 most probable elevation projection is 1049.37 feet with a minimum probable of 1047.10 feet. These projections indicate we will be hovering around elevation 1050, which is the determining elevation between a Tier 1 and Tier 2A shortage. A few points to keep in mind. It is March. Shortage determination is not made until the August 24-month study. The snow water equivalent has not yet peaked, and we could still see some storms move through in the next month. Furthermore, these projections do not include all of the 500-plus planned water. Nevertheless, water users should be planning for the worst, but hoping for the best. The end of calendar year 2023, most probable elevation is 1035.63, with a probable minimum of 1020.63. For the end of calendar year 2023 projections, this is quite a ways out. There's a bigger band of probabilities as shown in the graph. Similar to how we don't have all the water for the 500-plus plan in the model yet for 2022, there's still not a lot of the 2023 500-plus plan water in the model, and that should help once added. Here we have the 5-year probabilistic projections of future conditions in the Colorado system, which extend through 2026. These are typically updated every January, April, and August. However, in February 2022, Reclamation switched from using the Colorado River Simulation System, CRSS, to using the Colorado River Midterm Modeling System, or CRIMS, to provide the 5-year probabilistic projections. This change was made for a few reasons: streamline the modeling process, provide more consistency with the 24-month study and 2-year modeling projections, which uses CRIMS, and the result in better performance over the 5-year period. The table here shows the percent of traces from the CRIMS ESP run that will result in an event or system condition. These results include the 500-plus plan water that was modeled in the February 24-month study model. So going through the chances of different tiers in the next 5 years, we see less than 10% of traces falling between Tier 0 elevations in each year over the next 5 years. 87% of traces falling between Tier 1 elevations in 2023. Around 10% of traces falling between Tier 2A elevations in each year from 2023 through 2026. Around 57% of traces in 2023, 33% of traces in 2025, and 20% of traces in 2026 fall between Tier 2B elevations. And looking to the out years of 2025 and 2026, we see 30% and 40% of traces falling at or below Tier 3 elevations. And I'll end with this slide. So this slide shows the same information that I just previously presented on the table format, but instead in a bar graph format. It also notes the volume by which Arizona must reduce its 2.8 million acre-feet allotment of Colorado River water in each of the shortage tiers in the table to the right. And that concludes my presentation, and I can take any questions.
Thank you very much, Gretchen. Are there any questions from the committee?
Frank, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Rachel, you mentioned in the Lake Mead projections that some, but not all of the 500-plus planned water has been modeled. Do you know generally, approximately how much has been modeled in there and how much is yet to remain to be modeled in there?
So we do have some of the CAP subcontract water modeled. The Gila River Indian Communities contributions are included, and the PVID system conservation, as well as the Colorado River Indian Tribes contribution. What is missing is that ADWR and CIP are continuing negotiations with on-river users in Yuma, and we hope to reach an agreement in the very near future. And Reclamation is also likely to enter a system conservation agreement with NBIDD soon. So you will hopefully see those reflected if they reach agreement, as well as the remaining CAP subcontractor agreements.
Okay, so you're referring to Arizona's portion of the 500-plus plan, but there was more from California, and then Nevada agreed to contribute, I think, 14,000 or so. Where do things stand on the California and Nevada side?
So SNWA's ICS creation is included for 2021, as there was some 2021 numbers in the 2022 total. And then with California, it's dependent on their ICS, and that's still fluctuating as far as I'm aware.
Okay, when will we have a better sense of it not fluctuating and be committed? Will it be before August?
Honestly, for a solid answer on that, I'm going to have to go back to my group. I know, like I said, it's not final in the model right now, so I'm not sure at this time, but I can definitely get a firm answer back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from the committee?
Frank, I had one. Rachel, you did tell us what was the percent of snowfall on the Colorado. It went by quickly. I didn't get it written down. Could you repeat that for me?
So as of, I can tell you the updated number. So the snow water equivalent as of today, we were at 88% of seasonal median, excuse me, 88% of seasonal median.
88. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Any further questions? Okay. That certainly lays out some work for us. Let's move on to the next item. Item 6. Jenna will now provide for us with a Governor's Water Augmentation Innovation and Conservation Council update.
Good afternoon. As you said, my name is Jenna Norris. I coordinate the Governor's Water Augmentation, Innovation, and Conservation Council, and thank you for having me today. So I'm going to share with you all a brief update on the recent activities of the Governor's Water Council. I thought I would start today by quickly just sharing the website. It's been improved in my mind in there's my mouse, in recent months, so that things are quite accessible on here now. I'm trying to see from a distance. I'll do this very quickly. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, there's a navigation page where you can click on meetings. And now all of the meetings are, you can filter them. So let's say you were interested in how many times the council met last year. You could go to the council and see all of the meetings, and then of course we've got all of our meeting recordings and any materials that were discussed and agendas and presentations, all of it right here. And then there's a very similar setup now for the documents that have come out of the council and committees. And so if one was interested in the annual report of the council, for example, you could use this top filter to filter to the council, and there's our annual reports. You can also type in, if you were looking for something related to the Legal and Regulatory Subcommittee's report, you could type in a keyword here and find it. So as I go through it today, if anything, if you'd like more detail on any of the presentations I'm going to brief you on, they are all on this web page. Okay, I'm going to click exit. Hopefully it doesn't exit out. Okay, so the council last met for their quarterly meeting on November 30th of last year. The meeting recording is linked on this slide. Chairman Director Bushatsky started the meeting off with Colorado River update, during which he shared information on the 1030 consultation and the resulting 500+ plan and where they were with that. Next, he shared an update on the discussion of additional management plans. And then finally, the committees shared updates with the council. The majority of this presentation will go into those committee updates and what they've been up to in the last several months. I did also want to note that there was originally scheduled a council meeting for this coming Friday on March 25th, but that has been canceled due to the water-intensive legislative session that is still underway. So the council will next meet in June And there will be plenty of emails and updates to everyone as that date gets closer. The non-AMA Groundwater Committee met ahead of that November council meeting on October 14th, and they also have met since on January 6th. At the October committee meeting, Representative Griffin shared a summary of the 2021 legislative accomplishments for water, and that was followed by presentations on enhanced recharge from Keith Nelson, ADWR Senior Research Hydrologist, and Nick Haunt, who's a retired Director of Development Services for Mojave County, as well as a current contractor for Mojave County. Members of the committee discussed and revisited the non-AMA Groundwater Committee goals, and participants, along with the co-chair Jamie Kelly, stated the desire to have further discussions on water management strategies such as INAs, RMAs, and subsequent AMAs at a future meeting. Then at the January 6th meeting of the committee, Jamie Kelly posed to the committee what are the various possible objectives, goals, and needs for additional groundwater management in rural areas, and proceeded to share a number of slides summarizing the various choices for potential groundwater management structures and tools. Following Jamie's presentation, Carol Ward, ADWR Deputy Assistant Director, shared an overview of the existing voluntary options and tools available currently to address water availability. And then there was a robust discussion by committee members, with some bringing forth the idea of forming a subcommittee to further explore rural groundwater management strategies, but a consensus was not reached by the committee at that time, and a subcommittee was not formed. Moving on to the Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee. The committee did not have a report for the council at the November meeting, as they had not met since August, but they did meet on January 13th of this year, during which they heard a series of presentations on weather modification and cloud control. Jennifer Heim, ADWR Deputy Counsel, presented on the current existing statutes governing weather modification projects in the state, sharing the gaps in current statutes and the questions that those gaps give rise to. Catherine Rydell, who is our Community Water Systems Coordinator here at the department, compared the various regulatory requirements and provisions for states which have weather modification laws. And James Walter of SRP presented a timeline of breakthroughs in weather modification and cloud seeding science, and he also shared an update on the White Mountains Research Project, which is a feasibility project being conducted by the Desert Research Institute and funded through a partnership between SRP, White Mountain Apache Tribe, ADWR, as well as the City of Phoenix and Tempe. The committee meeting ended with a discussion facilitated by the chair, Wade Noble, on the potential for that committee to develop a long-term water augmentation plan. Post-2025 AMAs committee was quite busy towards the end of last year and leading up to that November 30th council meeting in particular. The committee met 3 times on October 5th, October 27th, and November 9th. The October 5th meeting focused on exempt wells in the Prescott AMA, with the committee hearing a presentation from Ron Doba of NAMWA on the findings and draft recommendations of the Prescott AMA Exempt Well Study Group. Their recommendations are posted on the council webpage, as well as linked on the slide. And then at both the October 27th and November 9th meetings, the committee discussed the 2021 package of proposals that they had been working on for many months. The discussions were robust, spirited, and productive, and the committee co-chairs determined that proposed potential solutions which met 3 defined criteria would ultimately be brought forward to the council. The criteria were ideas that addressed more than one challenge or opportunity, had overall committee support, and were politically viable in 2022, considering both ADWR and legislative leadership. So, at the November 30th council meeting, committee co-chairs Warren Tenney and Cheryl Lombard brought forward a package of 5 proposals, which included ideas for potential legislation, rules, as well as policy. That package also includes an additional list of ideas that were not brought forward to the council, but are ideas for potential future exploration in 2022 and beyond. And of course, that package of proposal is on our website, and you can find it on the documents page. It's also linked on this slide for convenience. That kind of rounds out my committee updates, but I did also want to share that as part of the department's ongoing efforts to address stakeholder concerns regarding the recharge and recovery program, as well as in response to those post-2025 recommendations I just shared about, the department formed the Recharge and Recovery Work Group. The goal of this group will be to develop a more thorough understanding of the challenges and needs of the stakeholders and to identify potential improvements that can be implemented within the existing regulatory framework. You'll see on your screen, move this mouse, that the first meeting of this group will be Tuesday, April 19th from 1 to 3. I think many of you should have received the announcement I sent out with a letter with more details on this group. Please note that the original tentative date was April 14th, but it has been changed to April 19th. And you'll get plenty of emails from me reminding you of that as well. So this first meeting on the 19th will focus on the recovery program as it is defined in statute, with the goal of building a consistent foundational understanding to enable focused discussions at subsequent meetings of the work group. To kick off this work group, we have created a survey which is linked in the slide, and it asks 2 questions to help guide our preparations and ensure the information presented is most useful to stakeholders. The survey closes Monday, March 28th, so that is this upcoming Monday. So if you would like to give input, please do so before that date. Finally, a new webpage was designed to house all of the meeting information related to this group. The website address is at the bottom of this page. It's on our Recharge programs page. And so all of the meeting materials, presentations, recordings, much like the council, will all be posted to that website. And the link for the survey is also on that website as well. So we really look forward to continued input and collaboration through this work group. And if you have questions or suggestions, you can direct them to me. My contact information is here on the slide. Email is great. I'm also always available by phone. And then Nadine Hubbard is the council facilitator. And if you have questions about council, she's also able to assist. Finally, there's John Riggins, who is our manager for statewide planning. So that concludes my updates. If you have any questions or clarification, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Good report, Jenna. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, you did such a great job. We don't have any questions at all.
I agree. Nice job, Jenna. Yes.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, moving right along, let's go to agenda item 7, which is the major event of the day, Phoenix AMA Draft 5th Management Plan. And Natalie will begin the presentation on the Draft 5th Management Plan for the Phoenix AMA before passing to AMA staff to present on the AMA sector dashboards. Natalie?
Excuse me, Mr. Vice Chair. We do have a question in the comment. It's from Patrick Adams. He'd like to make a comment on agenda item number 7 on behalf of AMWA. I would like to leave this up to you on when you would like for him to make his comment be known.
Thank you very much. And why don't we do that after we have your presentation? And then perhaps after the committee has some discussion, but before any action is taken.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Fairbanks. I appreciate it. Members of the council, good afternoon. And thank you for having me. Like you said, my name is Natalie Mast. I am the AMA director responsible for the management plans here at ADWR. I am very pleased to be here today to say that we've published a draft fifth management plan for the Phoenix Active Management area. And my colleagues and I will be walking you through some of the details on that plan, and also will request your comments on that draft plan. Next slide. We are going to cover a lot of ground today. There's a lot of things on this list here. So in the interest of time, you can choose to hold your questions till the end. We'd be happy to flip back to any of the previous slides or anything like that as needed, or any of the dashboards as needed. So first, I am going to provide an overview of the fifth management plan, and then I'll hand it over to Amanda and Nick and Colette, who will walk us through our new data dashboards. After that, I'll hand it off to Sandy Favorites to provide an overview of a proposal to add an alternative mining program to the 5MP, and then I'll return to provide some information on the process going forward. At that point, I will gladly hand it back over to the council for any questions or discussion. Next slide, please.
Natalie, you'd like us to hold questions until all of those parts are done, or can we ask questions after individual parts?
I can leave that up to your preference. It may just be easier to at least hold it till the end of each section, if not till the end.
Okay. Well, why don't we, if we can hold to the end of all of the comments, we'll do that. But if there's something very specific about any piece, after that piece, we will deal with those questions.
Sounds good.
I agree with that, Frank.
Natalie?
Thank you. All right. So I'm not going to try to teach you all anything about the Groundwater Management Act. I know that you are all very well versed in it. I just wanted to point out that since the Groundwater Management Act was passed in 1980, a lot has changed. But one thing that we are very confident in is that Arizona and the AMAs are really in a better place, a stronger, more resilient position because of that act. Next slide, please. The act set forth a series of requirements, a variety of requirements. It created the initial AMAs, and it also established this series of 5 management plans for each AMA. These plans were designed to be incremental, gradually increasing conservation requirements over time in order to move toward the management goal of that AMA, which is safe yield for the Phoenix AMA, and they were to do so by reducing withdrawals of groundwater. The plan we're discussing today is the fifth management plan, so it's the last in that series. Assuming we meet the adoption timeline that I'll lay out at the very end of this presentation, the requirements in the fifth management plan will go into effect on January 1st, 2025, and will remain in effect until the legislature determines otherwise. Next slide, please. Thank you. We began the process to develop the fifth management plans in mid-2019. We conducted an extensive stakeholder process, working with folks across the AMAs and across sectors to develop conservation programs for the 5 MPs that were responsive to stakeholder concerns and would function to reduce withdrawals of groundwater. Over the course of the last year, we worked to put those concepts into draft regulatory language and to draft narrative to support those requirements. We intend to spend much of this year working through the legal adoption or the promulgation process for the fifth management plan for each AMA. Next slide, please. The draft fifth management plan was published to ADWR's website on January 31st. The management plans webpage also includes links to the low water use plants list, Supplement 1, which lists allotment data for each ag right, and to a report which was also published on January 31st that details the method for analyzing safe yield and discusses the status of each AMA with regard to its goal. Next slide, please. One of our major goals for the 5 MPs was to streamline these documents. Much of that streamlining could be achieved by referring to supplemental information rather than including extensive detail within the plan. For example, rather than extensively detailing geologic structures and hydrologic conditions, we point to the most recent model report. This both allows the management plan to be streamlined and also ensures that the reader is directed to the most up-to-date information available. This was particularly important for the 5 MP due to the indefinite timeline of this plan. By streamlining, we were also able to condense the document from 11 chapters to 8 chapters. We also added an executive summary, which provides a brief overview of the document and helps point the reader to additional detail throughout. Next slide. Another way we streamlined the document was moving much of the data online, like I mentioned. Previous plans have had extensive data tables printed within the document, but those tables were unable to be corrected if errors were found, and because they were printed, we were unable to update them with additional years of data over time. The growth of interactive online data tools and dashboards has allowed us to move a lot of that previously static data online to make it more interactive and transparent, allowing us to provide additional detail and make more of our data more readily available. In addition to interactive tools and downloadable data on our data page, like I mentioned, we published a comprehensive report which includes a description of the components of safe yield, how ADWR analyzes each of those components, the status of each AMA, and the status of each AMA with regard to its management goal. We won't go too much into detail about that report today, but we do plan to spend a chunk of time at a future GUAC meeting discussing that report. The result of these structural updates for the plan is that the plan is more accessible, it's easier to navigate, and it will have data and references that will remain updated despite that indefinite timeline of the 5th management plan. Next slide. In addition to the structural changes, the 5 MP also contains significant updates to the conservation requirements. We began the development process for the 5 MPs with in-person meetings in mid-2019, but moved to an online-only format in early 2020 due to the pandemic. In order to address some of the challenges of holding these types of meetings online, we developed a number of strategies: use of the chat function in our online meetings, pauses in the meetings to allow time for people to ask questions or speak up, online questionnaires for additional questions or feedback after the meeting, and what you see on the screen here, which is the 5 MP concept page. The concept page was developed as an effort at transparency and communication, providing a one-stop location for quick summaries about each of the proposals that we were developing for the 5 MPs, data about those proposals, references to meetings where those proposals were discussed, and stakeholder comments about those proposals. Eventually, we added draft regulatory language for each of the proposals to this web page as well. This page is still available and now functions as an overview of the updates made for the 5 MPs and allows stakeholders to explore some of the history of the development and the rationale for development of each of the 5 MP conservation programs. We've talked about many of these items in previous meetings, but I will provide a quick overview today as well. Next slide. Thank you. In the recharge chapter, there was language related to the storage of water in areas with shallow depth to water that was originally added in the 3rd management plan. This language had not previously been enforced, at least partially due to a lack of clarity about what shallow meant. In order to be transparent about how we would actually implement that language, we wanted to add some draft definition language to the fifth management plan. So that draft language for the 5MP has been expanded to include a definition of shallow as 50 feet or less below land surface, with a report to further refine those areas. So that 50 feet is a starting point, which will be further limited by that report. And that report will define the areas within the AMA which are deemed to be shallow, which, like I said, it'll allow us to narrow that definition, narrow it from that 50 feet starting point, and also to update those determinations over time. Again, going back to kind of this indefinite nature of the 5MP, we thought that update over time was something that was really important here. We heard significant feedback about the original language that we had proposed for that definition. And so we recently posted an updated draft of that regulatory language, which would add some clarifying language that would indicate the criteria that we would consider in addition to that 50-foot indicator. Including considerations for mounding around recharge facilities, for shallow water in riparian areas, and for areas where dewatering or drainage activities are occurring. Excuse me. Ultimately, the goal here is to avoid adding additional water to areas that are already shallow, particularly in those areas where drainage and dewatering activities are occurring. The idea here is that if you're storing water in an area of shallow water, then you need to recover that water within that same area in order to protect the water that is being underground to be stored, so it's not being drained away. That updated regulatory language is available now on our 5MP concepts page, and we intend to incorporate that updated language into the 5MP drafts as we begin the promulgation process for each AMA. In the Ag chapter, the updates are broader. The default conservation program for Ag is what we call the BASE program, an allotment-based program based on historic acreages and historically grown crops. For this program, statute allows for a 5% reduction of the top 25% of water duties within a series of limitations. For the BMP program, which is an optional alternative program, extensive updates were made to the list of BMPs and minimum points requirements for several categories were updated. These updates were made in collaboration and with the recommendation of the BMP Advisory Committee, which was chaired by Scott Riggins. Finally, there is an additional optional alternative program for the 5MP, which allows someone farming multiple IGFRs to combine the allotments of those IGFRs with a 5% cut to the aquifer, enabling that person to submit a single annual report, to use any of that combined allotment anywhere across the combined footprint of those IGFRs, and encourages the use of the water on the most efficient lands in that combined footprint. Next slide. In the municipal chapter, we again have multiple programs. The major updates were to the programs for large municipal providers or for those supplying more than 250 acre-feet of water for non-irrigation use. The GPCD program is the default program for large providers who have a designation of assured water supply, and providers who are not designated may not participate in the GPCD program. The 5MP draft language contains an updated calculation for the GPCD requirement, which uses a rolling average of the provider's historic GPCD to calculate the provider's target. This calculation functions to apply downward pressure to the provider's GPCD over time, allowing for a number that is customized to that provider, could reasonably be achieved, and still reflects reductions in withdrawals of groundwater through that downward pressure on GPCDs over time. The non-per capita program is a BMP-style program for large municipal providers. Designated providers may opt into this program, and undesignated providers are required to be in this program. Significant updates were made to the BMP list for this program, and updates were made to the point targets and tiers for this program. In the industrial chapter, several subsectors have proposed updates. For power plants, a minor update allows for a modification to be made to the cycles of concentration requirements if blowdown water will be beneficially reused. For golf courses, the method for calculating conservation requirements was fully redesigned to better reflect overseeding practices and more recent consumptive use analyses. For non-golf turf facilities, the allotment calculation was split in two: a less generous calculation for facilities with greater than 30% water-intensive landscape, and a more generous calculation for facilities with less than or equal to 30% water-intensive landscape. This is designed to incentivize those more efficient types of landscapes and includes a provision to provide a consideration for parks and schools where additional turf may have functional purposes like sports fields. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to the updates on the conservation requirements, the draft 5MP simply looks different than previous plans. We've worked to streamline, move things to more interactive online formats, and we've also worked to add information about how folks can participate and be engaged. The GUAC meetings today, like this, are one way that people can be engaged. Jenna talked earlier about the council and the opportunity for engagement there. And AMA staff are available by phone and email for one-on-one support, whether it be specific annual report questions, a question about historical data, or an idea for improvement. Next slide. That all said, the transparency and data availability improvements are one of the things we're most proud of in all of this. So with that, I will hand things off to Amanda to introduce the sector dashboards.
Thanks, Natalie. Good afternoon,
Perhaps before Amanda starts, very quickly, is there any questions by the committee on what they've heard so far? Any questions that can't wait? Let's not have any comments right now, but if there's something you heard that you really have a present question on, we'll go with it now. Hearing none, let's go ahead, Amanda, with your section.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Good morning, or good afternoon, sorry. My name is Amanda Long, and I am the AMA Planning Manager, and along with two of our planners today, we'll be walking you through the sector data dashboards. As Natalie mentioned, the data dashboards were created for each sector, agricultural, industrial, and municipal, as a supplement to the FIF management plans, and also to support our data transparency efforts. In the past, data included in the management plans was static and did not cover the entire management period, and the data itself was difficult to update. So for the FIF management plans, we have removed a lot of the data in the plan itself into these interactive dashboards. So these dashboards can be updated in every year with the most up-to-date data, and also allows the user to filter to the information that they are most interested in. So the data dashboards are located here on the AMA data web page, and if you scroll down, there's multiple drop-downs, each with a dashboard. So I will start with the agricultural dashboard, which is in this drop-down, and you can use this dashboard within the drop-down here, or you can expand it to make it a bit bigger. So there are 7 pages in the agricultural dashboard, and I'll walk you through each of them. So this first page shows irrigation acres over time, as well as a water used by type over time. So you can filter the data to the specific AMA that you're interested in, and the specific water type that you are interested in. And then also you can select certain years that you'd like to look at. So the second page of the dashboard is similar to the bottom of the first graph, but it allows you to type in a specific right and look at the water use by type on that specific right. Again, you can filter by time, and then it also shows the allotment quantity for that right and the irrigation acres for that right. There are two other links on this page. First is to our annual reports, to our DocuShare, which allows you to look at historical annual reports. And then there's also a link to our irrigation rights map. The third page of the dashboard shows the flexibility credits or flexibility counts over time. So again, you can filter to a specific right, and that will show you the flexibility counts over time for that right. Again, you can filter by time, and this page will also show you the active management area, subbasin, and irrigation district for the right that you chose. And then there is also a link on this page that allows you to search for credits that are on sale by irrigation district. So this next page shows the water used by type, and this can be filtered by irrigation district. So you can choose an irrigation district, and it will show you the water used by type for the specific year that you have. So here it's 2020, and that can be filtered to a different year as well. So the next two pages of the dashboard are related to the best management plans, best management practices program, and it shows the BMPs that are implemented by participants for Category 3 on this page, and then Category 4 on the next page, and then allows you to filter by AMA and then by year. As there are no participants in the other AMAs, you can only filter by Phoenix and Pinal for this one. And this last page just shows some definitions that are helpful as you kind of go through the dashboard. So with that, I will pass it over to our industrial planner to walk you through the industrial dashboard.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. And it's really impressive to see the data in a form that you can really get your hands on it and understand it. Any questions from the committee before we move to the next?
Frank, this is Dave. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Amanda, when you showed the water use by year for, let's say, an irrigation grandfathered right or a district, is like on this, well, go back, well, keep moving.
Sorry, for a district or for a right?
For a right, that's fine, for the irrigation right. So my question is, this shows some effluent being used on this right. Is that the physical supply that's being reported here, or is this the sort of legal supply that is being sort of used or accounted for there?
This is actual use.
I believe this is the actual use that's reported by this IGFR owner.
So if the IGFR owner, for example, is in the Roosevelt Irrigation District, which receives effluent from the city of Phoenix under an exchange with SRP and others, from an accounting perspective, that's still groundwater. But here, when you report it in this dashboard, it's going to be reported as effluent?
It'll be reported as the legal water, like it would on their annual report.
Okay,
so it should.
Go ahead.
Sorry, sorry, Dave.
No, go ahead.
So this really tracks what comes in on the annual reports. We don't typically have good tracking of physical water types, like what actually gets applied to the ground. So this is really going to reflect those legal water types that get reported through our annual reporting process.
So a farmer in the Roosevelt Irrigation District, I guess I'd have to go look at their report to see if they report effluent or they report it as groundwater, okay? That may also affect how you calculate progress to save fuel as well. But I'll talk to my staff about it. Thank you.
Okay.
Further questions? Hearing none, let's move on to the next section. I guess Sandy's going to discuss a mining proposal. Do I have that right?
Oh, I will, oh, sorry, I think we have additional dashboards before
Okay,
Sandy,
go ahead.
and then I'll hop in real quick before Sandy goes, just to introduce what she'll be talking about.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the council. My name is Nick Rodendo, the industrial planner, and I'll be going over the industrial dashboard for you guys. So it's got, the industrial dashboard is the same layout as the agricultural dashboard that Amanda was just going over. Here we have the industrial demand by subsector. So over here we got the legend where it shows the facility types, the different industrial subsectors we have here. You can filter it by year down here. And then right here, you got a filter for which subsector you want to use. For example, if we want to use golf course in the Phoenix AMA, this would show you all the golf course demand over the years, whichever year you specified. And then we always update it as well. So last time you can see it was updated January 6th, but we usually update it once the annual reporting season's over, once we get all our data entry done. The next one we have here is the industrial demand by supply source. So we got the same filters. You can filter it out by which facility subsector you'd like to use. You can filter it by AMA, and as well you can do it by the years. And then here it'll show you which water is being used. We have commingled, Colorado River, affluent, groundwater, and surface water. And then as well you can change it by subsector. So if you want to look at dairy, it's mainly dominated by well, if you look at dairy, it's mainly dominated by groundwater, and then, well, surface water, my apologies. But yeah, up here, this thing's in the way, but I'll show you what the legend is right here. For the next slide, we have turf facility demand and allotment over time. So this shows the compliance use, and the total use compliance use is total use with effluent being adjusted, and it shows the allotment quantity in a line vector right here. As well, you can just like all the other ones, you can filter it by AMA, the facility type, and if it uses groundwater or if it does not use groundwater. And the last slide for the industrial dashboard is just like the agricultural dashboard. It's got a definitions tab. So if you have any questions on what some of the stuff means on this dashboard, you can go to this tab and it'll tell you what each of these words mean. For example, you have compliance use right here and commingled. Besides that, are there any questions before I pass it off to Colette?
Hearing none, go right ahead. Colette?
Thank you for your time, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the council. Oh. How do you get out?
Just take your gate.
All right, my name is Colette Pancini. I'm the municipal planner in the AMA section, and I'm going to be going over our municipal dashboard. This first slide right here is just some general information about providers. So the idea is you could look for a certain municipal provider that you're interested in. So we could type in City of Phoenix, or you could just type in an AMA and it would filter to all of the providers in that AMA. And this information up here in the top right will filter. It could tell you the right type of the provider, which conservation program they're in, their service area population, just some general information about them. This bottom left graph will show their 2020 supply by water type. If you hover over the different pieces, it could tell you the quantity, the exact quantity in acre feet. And then this chart on the bottom right is their overall demand over time. This information, again, would be updated after every annual reporting year. The second tab is looking at supply and demand through the lens of large and small providers. The default here is looking at large providers, but if you'd like to look at small providers, you could click on this button over here and toggle between the two of them, and it would filter these two charts up here. So the top left one is looking at supply over time, again broken up by water type. And since we're on the large provider section, this is the supply over time for all large providers. And then this chart up in the top right is the demand over time broken up by the customer types of non-residential, residential, and urban irrigation users. You can also filter by AMA, so if you're interested in just Phoenix, you could click on Phoenix. If you're interested in a certain water type, you could specify that. And then also broken up into the two main conservation programs for large providers, which are GPCD and non per capita. So you could further filter this, these two charts based on that as well. This third slide is looking at exempt wells. The top graph, these gray bars are the estimated exempt well population, and this coral colored line is the estimated number of exempt wells. And this bottom graph is the estimated volume pumped from those exempt wells. Again, we have an AMA filter up here on the top, so you can drill down the data if you choose to do so. And then this next tab is looking at some data related to large provider conservation programs. This donut chart up here on the top left shows the number of providers regulated under each conservation program. Again, you could filter that to just Phoenix and hover over to see the number of large providers regulated by each program. This top right graph shows the top 10 most frequently implemented BMPs for providers regulated in the non per capita conservation program. It only displays 1 year at a time. The default is 2020, but if you'd like to look at older years, you could come over and use this reporting year filter. This bottom left graph is comparing the actual GPCD, or the average actual GPCD and the average target GPCDs of providers regulated under that program from 2000 to 2020. And then lastly, this chart in the bottom right is looking at, it's a histogram of lost and unaccounted for water percentages for all providers. And you could drill that down into providers regulated in the GPCD program and those regulated in the non per capita program. Essentially, the providers who are in these green bars are in compliance, so their LNU is under 10%, and those that are over that 10% mark are in these yellow, orange, and red colors. And then lastly, like the other dashboards, we just have some definitions related to the municipal program. And that is all I have. I can take any questions before passing it back to Natalie.
Are there any questions from the committee?
I just have a comment, Frank, if that's okay.
Go.
Thank you. I want to say that, you know, I looked at these dashboards probably a year and a half ago or so when they were first being developed, but you guys have really done a great job of expanding what's in them and how they work, their interactive nature. I am, you know, very, very impressed with this information and the fact that it's available on your website and for anybody to access. So congratulations to all of you for that great work. It's just amazing that all of that data is there and it's interactive and you can search it. So thank you very much. I appreciate that very much.
I personally would agree. It's really impressive. Anything else? Let's move to the next presentation.
All right. The next item in the presentation, I will say thank you to both of you. I really appreciate those comments. We worked really hard on those dashboards and we were really excited to get those out in the world. Just as a heads up to all of you, we are in the very, very final stages of finalizing the recharge dashboard. So I'm hoping that will be up in the next week or so here. Excellent. So on the next item, thank you, before I move on, to Colette and Nick and Amanda for that. Next, we'll have Sandy provide some information about the 5MP mining proposal. We received this proposal a little bit late in our process, late enough in the process that we didn't get a chance to talk about it publicly. But we really saw it as a well-developed proposal that warranted consideration. Since we didn't want to just include it in the plans without discussion. We saw the GUAC meetings as a good opportunity to have some discussion about its possible inclusion in the 5MP. So with that, I will hand it off to Sandy.
Thanks, Natalie, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the GUAC. I appreciate your time today and your attention to this. And while we apologize for the lateness of this, it has been a long time coming, and the development of this program has been a priority for us for quite some time. And I've got a couple of slides, and I'll start sharing those, and we can walk through sort of the nuts and bolts and the background information of the program itself. Switch over here. Sorry for all this. I just moved and I'm on one screen, so it's making it very difficult for me. Okay. So the proposed Fifth Management Plan program is really, it was developed with other mining companies in Arizona and with our own operators worldwide, actually, in putting together sort of a more transparent program for possible inclusion in the Fifth Management Plan. Freeport is the one that is proposing this program at this time, although it was developed in cooperation with the other mining companies. And sort of its placement and its importance to Freeport and why we've sort of taken this approach is our water stewardship program is really focused on the fundamental human right. It's the access to water and how essential water is to not only our own operations, but the well-being of our communities and the environment around us. We live and work in these communities, so we're not looking at our operations as a sort of single entity. We are part of these communities and want to be and are implementing measures to be a positive part of those communities. Globally, our objective is to identify, manage, and mitigate both our current and future water-related risks. And we really recognize the importance of working with others and developing, programs to address efficiency and water reuse first before we start looking for new alternative water supplies. The existing mining program is very focused on tailings management. While there are components of the program that address other processes, probably the biggest part of the existing program is its requirement for density, the amount of solids versus wet material in our tailings facilities. And in recent years, the focus has on tailings management. I mean, it's always been on safety and operating those tailings facilities in a safe manner. There's been a few very disastrous tailings, failures that we are extremely cognizant of, and we've embarked on a worldwide, for all our operations, safety program, increasing the safety of our tailings. And the program that exists today, at least for Freeport, it doesn't really recognize the differences in each operation and how those operations are really driven by local climate and other factors. And so in order to really move away from just a single focus program, we wanted to develop a program that really was much more transparent to the public and easier to understand, frankly. Tailings or mining water uses and how water is being used in mines is sort of this black box that not many people really ever get a glimpse into. And we want to kind of open up that box so the public and everybody can understand how we're using water and how we're being efficient in that water use, that either we need to be more efficient or we already are efficient in the use of water, but really opening up those programs a bit more to be much more transparent. And from a management standpoint, what we're trying to do is really drive those operations to be more efficient and not employ practices that have been done for, it's always been done this way, but really test their boundaries of changing the way that they're operating those systems, and particularly on the water side, in being more efficient in their water use and reducing overall consumption, particularly on groundwater in those operations. We're especially focused on encouraging and really moving our operations more into recycling and reuse. And each operation is different in how much water it uses. Each operation employs different practices based on the ore that is present at that site. And a one-size-fits-all program is somewhat, it's not very telling of what each, the uniqueness of each operation and its needs and its ability to reuse water and use that water efficiently throughout each cycle of use. The program itself is being proposed as an alternative. We're not trying to tell everybody that everybody needs to do this in the mining industry. Freeport is committed to doing this program. It would be nice to have the state sort of blessing of this program by including it in the fifth management plan. And our intent is to roll this program out worldwide. In Arizona, both inside the active management area, we have one site in the Tucson AMA, our Sierrita operation, but also at all our operations in Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, but also in Chile and Peru, and also in Indonesia. The program is, it has several categories, and within each category, depending on the type of operation, if you're open pit or underground, it has a specified number of required best management practices. The categories are really focused on dust control, process and conveyance of ore, tailing storage. We're not losing, managing tailings properly. We're just changing that up a bit. Reducing system and evaporation losses. Cooling systems. We have a lot of cooling systems that are somewhat outdated and need to be upgraded and improve their efficiency. And again, this increased focus on recycling and reuse of reclaimed water throughout the process. I'm going to assume that you have the program itself, the details of what's in each category. So I don't want to walk through all of those measures. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those measures. But these are the areas where we really started, circling down and trying to understand what the potential is for increased efficiency and practices, frankly, that have been employed for many years that are not part of the existing mining program in the management plan. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee on the program, the proposal?
Frank, this is Dave. I have some questions for Sandy.
Go.
So, Sandy, would this only apply to metal mines and not sand and gravel operations, or would it also apply to sand and gravel operations?
We developed it for metal mining, Dave.
Okay. And you mentioned that you work with other mining companies. I take it you work with Resolution Copper?
Yes, resolution was part of that conversation.
Okay. And I think, and maybe Natalie or somebody from the department can answer this, but I think the only metal mining operation in the Phoenix AMA right now, I think, is just Resolution Copper, right? Or potentially Resolution Copper once it gets going. Is that right? Or do we have other?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So, all right. Okay, I mean, I think this is more for, I think, obviously down in the Tucson area where you have many more operations. So, okay.
For us, as far as the management plans go, it is, like I
Yeah.
said, we are gonna roll this program out statewide
Okay.
to all our operations.
As far as you know, Resolution Copper supports this alternative
They
approach?
support it as an alternative program, as an option.
Okay,
That's my understanding.
okay. All right, thank you.
Sandy, you, several times in your discussion, you talked about how you're studying it and working on it. Do you think enough analysis and work has been done and can be done that it can be included in the fifth management plan, or would it be an amendment to the plan done later? What's the outlook?
I think that's more for Natalie and the department to answer, to be perfectly honest. I think it has been developed enough. I think the important part is getting it out to the public and, you know, answering those questions and getting the public comfortable and you all comfortable that it is a meaningful program.
So we're at the starting line in a sense, rather than the finish line.
I think we're ready. I think we're ready for prime time, but that again is the department to answer that question.
Does the department want to comment on that?
Evidently not. Frank, I have another question.
We're overwhelmed by silence.
If they're huddling over there deciding what they're gonna say, but anyway.
It's not going in the fifth management plan.
If resolution was to use nothing but CAP water, either directly or through long-term storage credits, would they have to meet the management plan requirements for groundwater if they're not using any groundwater? And maybe that's not a question for you, Sandy, former director.
I would answer, but I'm going to let the department take that one.
I can take that. Thank you. And apologies that apologies that I missed the question earlier. We at this point are certainly open to hearing comments from both the GUAC and the stakeholder community on whether this should be incorporated into the fifth management plans. But I think, as Sandy said, it's been pretty well developed, pretty well thought through, and unless we hear some significant objection at this point, I think the plan is to go forward with incorporating it into the plan ahead of promulgation. So there's that.
Let me ask a follow-up question in response to what you just said. So then we've heard from Sandy. I take it that while some analysis and maybe some adjustment may be possible, the sense from the department is that the proposal generally looks sound and viable.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you. And Sandy, you wanted to add something? No.
I was going to also respond to Dave's question there, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Dave, the management plan's requirements, when we look at compliance, there is no compliance for water use that is not groundwater. So there's a little bit of nuance there where sort of the management plan's requirements still apply, but we don't have compliance authority unless there is groundwater use, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee?
Yeah, this is Rory. I'd like to compliment Sandy on the presentation and challenging all boundaries. I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes. You ready for the next
Oh, that
step?
was me. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Mr. Fairbanks.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to provide some information on next steps and then really hand it back to you all for the next pieces. So we have covered a lot here, I know, and as I said at the beginning, we are happy to kind of circle back and answer any questions or respond to any comments that you may have here. As always, I would be really happy to sit down with any of you and talk to folks individually if you want to get into more detail on any of this. Before we get to all of that, though, I would like to talk briefly about next steps. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the statutory requirement here, the statute indicates that the GUACs are to comment to the area director and to the director on draft management plans for the active management area before they are promulgated. So that's really the purpose of this presentation today. That's to provide a baseline of information to allow for those comments. We also, at previous meetings, provided GUAC members information about the timeline, about the publication of draft plans, and informed folks about our intent to request comments today, both in previous meetings and via email. Next slide, please. We are in the light blue portion of this timeline, so we have not yet started our formal promulgation or legal adoption process for the Phoenix 5th Management Plan. After today, we will be working to make any corrections or updates to the draft plan in response to comments, and we'll begin to prepare for that legal adoption process for the 5MP for the Phoenix AMA. The promulgation process is defined in statute and also includes a formal comment period. You can see that kind of in that fourth and fifth boxes there. Also includes a formal comment period, which begins on the day the promulgation order is issued and the hearing is announced, and it ends on the date of the hearing at 5 p.m. So anyone can submit comments either in writing during that time period, or they can provide verbal comments at the hearing. After the hearing, ADWR will issue findings from the hearing, responding to the comments received during that formal comment period and at the hearing. And we may decide at that time to adopt the plan. When the plan is adopted, we will send a notice of conservation requirements to all regulated parties. And assuming we meet our timeline of sending those notices in 2022, those requirements will become effective on January 1st, 2025. I do want to emphasize the importance of this timeline. In 2018, the Auditor General issued a report directing ADWR to complete and promulgate the 5 MPs, and it is very important that we meet this timeline of adopting all 5 fifth management plans by the end of 2022. So with that, you can go to the next slide, please. Finally, Mr. Chair and or Vice Chair and members of the GUAC, I would really like to thank you for your time and comments and attention today and over the last several years. And I would like to respectfully request your comments on the draft 5th management plan for the Phoenix AMA. So with that, you can go to the next slide. I can hand it back over to the council, and I would gladly take any questions or comments that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start with as each of the committee members speak, maybe you can first ask any questions you have, and then make comments on the plan to the department. Then once everybody on the committee's had a chance to ask their question, and make comments. We've had at least two people I see who've asked to speak. And if there's anybody else in the audience who would like to speak, if you would indicate your desire to speak, we'll allow you to speak. And then we'll consider a potential motion to move ahead. So again, let's first start with any questions and comments about the fifth management plan. Who would like to start off? But among the committee.
Frank, this is Dave. I can start off.
Great work, Dave.
Okay. Natalie, can we go back to the timeline? So you mentioned you're in the light blue area there on the left. What is your expectation that you're going to send out a promulgation order? What's the timing of that from today, let's say?
So due to staff workloads and that type of thing, we're kind of managing the promulgation of the 5 management plans in kind of an overlapping manner. So we'll start one, and then a month later we'll start a next one, because these processes last several months and we kind of need to overlap them, but stagger them a little bit in order to manage workloads and also finish them throughout the course of the year. On the schedule that I have laid out for those promulgation processes for all 5 fifth management plans, we are looking at the Phoenix AMA probably being 4th in that process, probably kind of like a late summer-ish time frame for starting the promulgation process.
Okay, thank you. Because I mean, the reason why I asked the question is I got notice of the Tucson one today, and so I was just trying to find out your timing. Okay, so I think you're going to hear from others on this, but you know, one of the issues that's been raised in a number of the comments that have been filed with the department about the fifth management plan is the whole area regarding recharge recovery, shallow groundwater areas, the area of hydrologic impact, things of that nature. And you know that at one time, when you initially raised this, there was a lot of feedback on that. And I think the department had made the decision to withdraw that idea of that was being proposed. At least that's what we understood. And then it reappeared back in the fifth management plan, and you've received a lot of comments. And now you're going to start a recharge and recovery group, which I think is going to address some of the comments and concerns that have been raised by the water users, particularly those who have stored a lot of water in the ground. And as you know, the recovery of that water that's been stored over the last 25, 30 years is going to be critical for us going forward, considering the tremendous growth that's occurring in the Phoenix AMA and obviously the potential shortage declarations that might impact those who rely on Colorado River water and have stored water underground to be able to use that in place of it. So this is a big area that I'm concerned about. SRP wants to be a part of the solution there. We've talked to a lot of the on-project cities about the solution with that regarding the recharge recovery area of impact, shallow groundwater issues. My concern is the timing of promulgation and then working through those issues with the regulated community and the water users. And I'm pleased to hear that your promulgation plan is not till later this summer or perhaps even in the fall, which will give us some time to work through this. If not, I, on behalf of the council, would ask that you all withdraw that until we get to a point where it's been hashed out with the regulated community and we come up with a program that's going to work for those who have stored water and who plan on recovering water in the future. So, and I would be happy to talk about that further with you specifically, but that is an area of concern for SRP or a lot of the customers that we serve, and I think others as well, including the Buckeye Irrigation Company and maybe some others as well. So I just put that out there for you as well for consideration. I would also, and you and I have talked about this and we have commented on it many times, so this is not going to be anything new. While we are not in safe yield in the Phoenix AMA at the present time, we have in historically, and when I say historically, just as, 10 years ago we were. So had you promulgated a plan 10 years ago, you would have said we're in safe yield. And what this really means is that we fluctuate in and out of safe yield. And we're not in safe yield right now because we've been in a fairly significant drought. And there may be some more pumping going on given the commodity markets and agriculture and some of the growth of the industrial water users in the area. So I'm very interested in having the department recognize in the plan itself, in the documentation, that we have been in recent years in safe yield. And that and you do recognize that we've made a lot of progress towards that. But I think it's more accurate to point out that we fluctuate around safe yield. And we've commented on this many times about how to look at it and how to report it and how to verbalize it in your documents, or at least say it in your documents. So I would like there to be some recognition that we have been in safe yield in the past, and then as recently as the period between 2007 and 2012, which is not that long ago compared to 1980 when we had significant overdraft. So, so I pass that comment along as well. I think that's important to point that out to the water users that we're going to go through these cycles of supply and demand where we're going to be fluctuating around it. I think we have made significant progress in this AMA towards that. So I pass that comment along as well. Lastly, I don't know with respect to how the GUAC passes its comments along to you. Is it just verbally like we're doing today? Or do we end up putting these comments in writing and it becomes a document from the GUAC to the director? So maybe that's a comment you can respond to as well. And with that, Frank, I have a few other things I could mention, but I'll let some others speak. So thank you.
Dave, did you want a response on your question of whether the verbal comments today are it, or whether there should be a written document?
Sure, that would be, yeah, it'd be helpful.
Sure, and I can actually, if it's okay, I can actually respond to a few things there. With the recharge portion, we recognize that there was some confusion and miscommunication around what was moving forward for the 5 MPs with the recharge language and what wasn't. So I'll clarify just a little bit there. Originally, we had proposed kind of a two-pronged thing. Adding a definition and implementing that existing language that was originally added in the 3 MP. And the second piece originally was that we would allow additional recovery in areas of shallow water. The second piece was withdrawn. We are not including that in the management plan. But we were moving forward with the first piece of that, which was actually implementing that existing language that was added in the 3MP. And in order to do so with some transparency, we wanted to add some definition language into the management plan in order to do that. So that's where that kind of 50-foot starting point came from, and that's really the definition that we're talking about today. So I understand that there was some confusion there, and I apologize for that. The other thing I'd like to clarify there is that with this implementation, any water that has already been stored would never be affected by this. And I think that's a really important point because the water that's already in the ground today would never be affected by this requirement. It would only be facilities that are permitted or re-permitted after January 1st, 2025, and then credits that were subsequently stored at those permitted facilities. So there's a little bit of nuance there, but it would really only affect those credits after 2025, not any currently existing credits. The other thing I want to note is really about the recharge work group that we have coming up. Recharge is complicated. I'm still learning about it. I feel like I'm probably going to be learning about it for a very long time. So really a lot of the intent of that work group is to provide a baseline of information for folks so that we can have some more nuanced conversations about recharge and recovery. It's not really focused on the 5MP, and it's not intended as a platform for the fifth management plans. So any questions kind of about this 5MP policy are really going to have to be separate from that kind of more educationally focused workshop. Let's see, I had a few notes here. You also mentioned safe yield, and I really appreciate those comments. Thank you. We can certainly have an extended conversation about that. And I just wanted to repeat what I said earlier is we do intend to have more of a full, broader discussion about our safe yield analysis for the Phoenix AMA at a future GUAC meeting. We just didn't really have the time in today's agenda to be able to get into all of that. So finally, you had your question about how comments are passed along. Thank you for that. Typically, the way comments are passed along is verbally through this meeting. We note the comments that are provided today. We'll include, kind of pursuant to our own statutory requirements, we will include a summary of the comments that are provided today in our presentation for the hearing for the Phoenix AMA. But anyone is welcome to submit additional written comments on the plan. And as I said earlier, I'd be happy to sit down with folks and talk through any comments in more detail if that would be something that would be helpful. So that was all I had.
Thank you, Natalie. That was very helpful to me, so I appreciate that. Appreciate the feedback.
Thanks.
Anything further, Dave?
No, I spoke my piece.
Good work. Stephen, Rory, Stephen, any of you have similar comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have comments.
Great. Why don't you go ahead with them?
And I think it's good to go because part of it follows along with Dave and Natalie. I'm getting educated even more as during this presentation, as you've spoken, literally minute by minute on this really vast program. And congratulations to everybody in the department on this tremendous amount of work that's gone into this and to our water community as well. But anyway, my comments are centered around the storage recovery siting criteria. I live and my farm is in the Buckeye Valley, and the Buckeye Irrigation Company was founded 137 years ago for farmers and ranchers to irrigate that valley with their dam structure that was put on the confluence of the Gila and the Olafria rivers. And this year, the Buckeye Water Conservation Drainage District is celebrating its 100th year right now. Buckeye is also designated as part of the BWLA. You guys love acronyms at the GUAC and the department. And man, for a new guy, I have to keep a dictionary by the side, but the Buckeye waterlogged area. I have concerns that has been brought up to me and that I've seen in the language that would incentivize recovery in areas of shallow groundwater for any entity that stores water in the Phoenix AMA. That is lifted right out of the draft of 5MP that is very disconcerting to me. This would have a negative impact on a portion of the Phoenix AMA that currently meets safe yield standards, as Mr. Roberts just talked about. And this would also cause, I believe, an unjust harm as it shifts the burden of this water mining onto the BWCDD. I'm concerned that the storage and recovery criteria as drafted are difficult to understand. And Natalie, you unwound some of it even this afternoon for me, but even in that unwinding, it reminded me that it is difficult. And that's why we have to unwind when we talk about it. Both the language as it has been presented to me in what I've read and in what the program is attempting to achieve. I've spoken to lots of people that you would know in industry, and I get a very different understanding of what the achievement or the goal is that is expressed in the language. Everybody that I know acknowledges that the department has worked hard, extremely hard in this area, and they've made many attempts to incorporate and address all of the industry comments that have been laid in front of you. Earlier, I just kind of found out a few weeks ago, or what, not even that long, about the Recharge and Recovery Program Work Group. So it was good to hear about that today, and that this group was, my understanding was to be tasked to dig even further into all of these issues facing the Recharge and Recovery Program. My comments that I am respectfully submitting through this council is to take these recharge and recovery criteria and the recharge recovery program out of the management plan, number 5, and allow the work group to wrangle with these and come up with a workable solution to be submitted at a later time to the department for a later addition into the 5th management plan. I don't know all of the dynamics of that, but that is what I wanted to talk about or submit today in my comment time. Thank you.
Any response to Stephen's comments?
Thank you for those comments. I appreciate that. I did want to clarify, you mentioned that you saw some language in there regarding incentivizing recovery in areas of shallow groundwater. I will go back and double check the plan for that language. That may have inadvertently been included from our original recharge proposal. So the portion about incentivizing recharge in shallow groundwater areas was really that second part of the proposal that I mentioned earlier, where we were allowing additional recovery in areas of shallow groundwater. That proposal was withdrawn. So we did intend to take out all the incentivizing type language about incentivizing recovery in areas of shallow groundwater area, but perhaps we missed one. So I'll double check for that. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Rory, any comments?
Yes, this is Rory. I'd like to kind of concur what Dave's saying and Stephen, that I think we need to move slowly on this recharge recovery issues. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but I think I've received some comments and it's something that I think needs to be looked at. And then secondly, I'd like to compliment the Arizona Department of Water Resources and staff for the great job on this 5th plan. And also, I didn't mention before about the simplification of their websites and their information, because I think that's really valuable for us and the public to see the transparency and to get information that they need. So I'd like to thank them on that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rory.
Great. Stephen Cleveland, are you still on? Do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to compliment you for taking on the easy task of being the chair to this illustrious group that has always stepped up and provided interesting input and figured out a way to deal with the issues from multiple perspectives and to be able to bring different groups together and be able to develop some consensus through the process. I want to thank and compliment both the new chair and the new vice chair to the easy task that they have selected at this time to take on and move forward with. And I'm still here to assist in any fashion that I can. I believe that I'm in nearing or exceeded my 30th year, so it's always, I guess you guys are putting me out to pasture, but that's okay too. But I want to compliment all the staff reports from all the various parties. I am not going to go through and repeat some of those. I think those should be done in written form and at subsequent meetings. And I think that the department staff, along with the various inputters, the reporters today, have done a nice job of helping to get GUAC up to speed and recognizing that we have a lot of work to do in a very short period of time. But I think we're up to the task. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Stephen, for your many years of tremendous leadership. And you've really been a heavy contributor to all of the successes and the mostly good work that we at GUAC have done.
Thank you.
With that, I'll add my comments and then we'll go to listening to the folks, and I'll try to be brief. Dave Roberts talked about the way things go in cycles and how there have been some very good cycles and there have been some not so good cycles. And I believe that, and that is certainly absolutely true. And there's always a chance that next year or this summer or tomorrow, water will start pouring out of the sky and that we'll have more of the stuff than we know what to do with. That's entirely possible. Not very likely, but possible. I think we find all of us, the cities, the industry, ag, and really our community finds itself in a time of tremendous pressure. We know what's happening on the Colorado River, and the report we got today did nothing but make it look bleaker than it already is. We know the population growth that is facing our area. And we're now back, there were a few years when we were at, as Dave pointed out, safe yield. There were a few years when there wasn't much growth. In fact, people were moving out of the valley. But now that's just the opposite of what's happening. People are moving in like crazy, and there's new houses, and there's apartments, and there's businesses and places to work, which are all wonderful things. And the reality is we need to just keep in mind that we're at the edge of a very difficult time. I think all of us, even the community that doesn't spend much time on water issues, has confidence that somehow together we're going to deal with the problems of population growth, the declining surface water availability, climate and drought. Somehow working together, we're going to make a difference. And if you look around this country, there are states that have really heavy rainfall and many large rivers that right now are sitting down wringing their hands because they really have no idea how to deal with this water issue. And here we are moving along already. The people that went before us can take pride on the tremendous steps that have been done in the past. And I think in the end, we can take pride on the steps we're taking today, including the kind of things that are in the fifth management plan. A lot of that credit, a great deal of the credit goes to ADWR in the state of Arizona, who's played the leadership role and is doing the tough work, pushing for the actions, the concessions that have made it possible for the state to succeed and for the state to know that somehow we're going to be able to deal with this problem. But I think a tremendous amount of credit also belongs to all of us, and including the ag, the industry, the mines, the cities, but also the public who've been willing to sacrifice, who've been willing to give up a little bit of what they have in order to find a future together, that by cooperating, by making concessions, by giving up something that we'd rather not give up, but we can live together, we're creating a water world that works here in the desert despite almost everything going wrong at once. And I think this fifth management plan is the logical next step in us being in the position where we can be proud that instead of sitting back and letting things happen to us, we make the difference and we find ways to solve these problems before the problems cripple us. I told Natalie I read this whole massive document and I was impressed by the quality of the writing in it. You know, this is pretty arcane stuff and pretty complicated, but I really think that for much of it, the great public out there could read it and get a great understanding of the complexity of the issues and a great understanding of the regulatory structure. It's that clear and the language is that understandable. Not so much the legal part, but the explanation. So I think we've got a tremendous plan. The credit for the plan not only goes to the department, which did incredible work, but also these groups that represented the different stakeholders in the economy. Having said all that, I think it's a tremendous plan. I believe it's critical that we go ahead now. We can't wait for it to start raining. We need to be ready for a lot more people to want to pump, a whole lot more this summer, a whole lot more than that next summer, a whole lot more than that the summer after that. And we need the regulations that are going to make it possible for all of us to succeed. Ag, industry, mines, cities, water providers, and the public. We need to find a way that we create the structure that we're all going to live through this difficult time. And while we play for rain, we need to take action to deal with it. So I believe we need to move ahead with this. I think it's a very well done plan, in large part because of tremendous input from the various stakeholders. Let me just quickly comment that on the idea of shallow groundwater. I have to say that this is a very complex issue, and I'm not sure I fully understand all of the implications and all of the positive and potential negative aspects of this. But still, I was thinking back to, I was briefly on the CAP board, and I looked at all of the sites where there was groundwater was being stored. And then I looked at the sites where we have cones of depression and heavy pumping, and where the ground levels are declining and there's subsidence. And those two places don't match. And it deeply troubles me that as we go into a time of greatly expanded pumping, that pumping could occur in areas that are already under pressure, who have very deep groundwater, who have subsidence, areas where farmers have little or no access to groundwater just because it's so deep and so expensive to pump. I worry that this expanded pumping that's going to be necessary is going to come in those places instead of the places where so much water has been put down for the day when we're going to have to pump. And I have to confess, I don't know the solution, and I certainly don't know any regulatory language or how it's done. But I think this is an issue we're going to have to deal with, and because of the pressure we find ourselves in. I think we're going to see amounts of pumping that if we don't deal with it sooner, we're going to regret that. The places that are viable today for well sites could become unviable with added pressure of pumping in their area. And that places that have plenty of water, and when water has been put down for pumping purpose in the future, that water is going to continue and rise to nobody's benefit. So having said that, that's my input on the process. I think the plan is very good. I believe it ought to move towards implementation. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments, and there's going to be a need to fine tune it and make changes in it to deal with issues as they come up. That there's no way that exactly it sits now, it's going to be passed. And I really want to commend the staff and everybody for doing it. I'm sorry about how long it took. It's time to go to outside speakers, and then we'll come back to the committee to finish this thing, hopefully quickly. We have, let me see, two speakers who've asked to speak. The first is Patrick Adams from AMWA. Patrick, are you prepared?
I'm here, Mr. Fairbanks. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead and do it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Adams. I'm the Water Policy Advisor for AMWA. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'll try to keep my comments brief, but we want to echo what Mr. Fairbanks said about the fifth management plan being a huge step forward. We've been involved in all of the municipal and recharge work groups over the last 2 years, and the fifth management plan is truly a tremendous accomplishment by ADWR staff, especially when you consider that they wrote 5 of them. So there's thousands of pages there that we're amazed and really impressed that they have put together such a good regulatory document. I want to focus my comments today on the department's proposed changes to the recharge and recovery criteria that were described earlier in the slides as a major change to Chapter 3. So as staff mentioned, this is a policy designed to address the impact that recharge could potentially have on areas of shallow groundwater. And this is a policy where there has been language in the past, but it's never been implemented or enforced. The department shared this plan with stakeholders to implement this policy last summer in June, and many in the water community have consistently raised concerns since that time. ADWR has received comment letters from Avondale, AMWA, CAP, Chandler, Gilbert, Glendale, Goodyear, Epcor, Phoenix, Peoria, Scottsdale, SRP, Tempe, and Tucson, asking that this policy be revisited or removed from the fifth management plan. And last week we submitted our fourth round of written concerns about the policy on behalf of our members. There is a common concern that most stakeholders share with this policy in Chapter 3, and that it imposes severe restrictions on recovery of stored water, and it will limit the operations of many water providers without providing a significant water management benefit. It's been challenging for stakeholders to understand the ramifications of this policy because there hasn't been any official analysis on what recharge facilities will be affected or what areas will be deemed shallow water. The department plans to publish that analysis in 2024 after the 5MP is adopted. And we want to acknowledge that the department did recently update the draft language in response to stakeholder concerns, and we appreciate that and we see it as a progress, but unfortunately the policy remains largely the same and there's lots of uncertainty. The recovery restrictions are very limiting and no one knows what facilities this will impact or what areas will be designated as shallow water. So as we've heard from members of the council, ADWR will be convening a work group on recharge issues in April. We had also thought that that work group would be an appropriate venue to evaluate the shallow water policy and give it that analysis and vetting it deserves. Because we don't want this policy to be rushed at the final hour and become a permanent provision of the 5MP. If that work group isn't the right venue, perhaps it could be reformulated or there's another appropriate venue. But again, we think that it would be appropriate for this policy to receive some thorough analysis before implementation. So I'll work to cut my comments short there, but in light of these concerns, we at AMWA and our members are respectfully asking ADWR to remove this language from the 5MP and holistically review it amongst other recharge issues, perhaps in that upcoming work group. And we hope that on behalf of the many stakeholders in the Phoenix AMA, the GUAC will echo this request to the ADWR director to remove the policy from the 5MP and consider it in a further separate process. So thank you for the opportunity to share our comments and perspectives. And I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions or elaborate if it would be helpful.
Thank you, Patrick. Is there any questions of Patrick by the committee? Thank you very much, Patrick. We'll let you go and we'll move on to Bill Cook. Bill is
yes.
with golf courses.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the committee allowing me to speak. I want to thank Natalie and Nick and the whole ADWR team for being so very open with a discussion related to the fifth management plan and also helping us with day-to-day operational needs. So we certainly appreciate that. I want to state that the Rec Centers of Sun City takes this fifth management plan very seriously. For those of you who don't know, Sun City has 8 golf courses, all built in the 60s and 70s. So as you know, we have wall-to-wall turf. What we do have is roughly 260 plus acres that we're going to have to remove in order to meet the 90-acre requirement under the fifth management plan, which we don't dispute. There are 3 things that really are sticking points for us with respect to the fifth management plan. And Natalie, I apologize. I know you've heard these before, but I think the committee should hear this as well. With 6 courses requiring mitigation to the tune of about $21 million, we just need more time with respect to being able to mitigate those courses, remove the turf, install the low water use plants. And so I know there is going to be a process where we can apply for a variance, but the problem with that is that if the wording is not in the plan itself, the fear is that there's a possibility that somebody could rescind that variance down the road. The likelihood, I'm not sure, but that is a concern. So we would rather just have that wording within the plan itself. Secondly, with respect to low water use plants, the plan allows for 1 acre per hole And so we're removing 260 acres. So if we're only allowed 1 acre per hole, what we're going to be left with is a dust bowl and a heat bowl, which then becomes, not only an issue for homeowners, for Sun City, but it's an environmental issue as well with respect to heat and with respect to dust. And then finally, the fifth management plan requires a 50% vegetative cover for every plant that is planted for low water use, which we've already committed $14 million in turf reduction and irrigation. And if we had applied that 50% vegetative cover to what we've already done, it would have been an additional $20,000 plus per acre to accommodate that request. So we're asking that that either be removed or at least removed or reduced down to a more reasonable vegetative cover percentage. So those are the 3 primary issues that we have. And again, we've already spent $14 million in mitigation efforts, and we're going to spend another $21 million. But these 3 issues, are a great concern for us. So I guess my question today is that looking at the schedule that Natalie presented, we've submitted these edits via the website, and our water attorneys also submitted them. My question is are they still on the table in terms of getting the edits into the fifth management plan? Or are they still under review, I guess?
I can respond to Bill's comments, Mr. Chair. So a couple things there, Bill. So you expressed a concern about the variance and administrative review. So that process is detailed in Chapter 7 of the plan in the implementation chapter. And additionally, just for your reassurance there, those provisions are statutory. We don't have an option about removing those unless the legislature were to do something there. So those provisions are mandatory for all management plans, that there be an opportunity for administrative review and variance. So there is that. As for the 50% coverage for low water use acreage, we actually missed one place where we were supposed to update that in the plan, and we missed it. So when we publish an updated draft ahead of promulgation, we do expect to update that coverage requirement for low water use acreage to 30% instead of 50%. The question about the schedule and your submitted edits, we will continue to work with Rec Centers of Sun City, of course, and I know we're working toward kind of figuring out the best path forward for your particular facility and kind of all the unique characteristics there. So we'll certainly continue to consider your comments and work with Rec Centers to resolve what we can.
So I certainly appreciate that. That's some good news there. I will say 30% still is going to be painful for us, but we can talk. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anyone else from the public? Any further comments from the public that we need to take before we move ahead?
It looks like Simone would like to speak.
Okay, Simone.
Thank you. I actually, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I saw time getting short, so I went ahead and just put my comments directly into the chat. But I would like to just call to the attention of the council the concerns that City of Chandler has regarding this fifth management plan shallow water issue. I do appreciate that this does not impact current storage. However, I think it's really important to understand that there are many municipal providers that rely on annual storage and recovery. So that is the practice of delivering water to a recharge facility and recovering that same water out of our distribution wells in our service area in the same year. And this new policy would prevent that if we're storing at recharge facilities that are deemed to be in an area of shallow water. This is a huge concern for City of Chandler. I know it's a huge concern for many, many other cities that rely on annual storage and recovery. It's a significant component of our operations. and to have a policy that is not well understood at this point. There have been so many stakeholder concerns that have been raised. Chandler has sent multiple rounds of letters and concerns, and I appreciate the department is trying to work towards better water management, but I just think that there are a lot of unintended consequences of this policy, and it needs a lot more vetting. So anyways, I put my formal comments into the chat though. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you. Are there any further people that wish to speak? Okay, let's close the public comment and we move towards any GUAC discussion and recommendation to the director. That's, I guess, 7D there. We can take action. And I guess the action would be some form of recommendation to the director to move ahead with the fifth plan and with any additions or subtractions from that. Is there a motion from the committee or their comments?
Well, Frank, this is Dave again. And I appreciate Natalie's comments regarding the recharge and recovery work group and how the language in the fifth management plan reads, being more prospective. But there just seems to be enough concern about that from the community. You listen to how many different municipalities and others have commented on that to the department. You know, I was thinking about making a motion to for the GUAC to support the removal of that provision in the plan, pending working through it, so that the regulated community feels comfortable that it's not going to impact their operations. And just like you heard from Simone, it's really an operational issue for many of them. And in fact, if you look at the public policy for underground storage and recovery, one of the big important parts of that was to facilitate the underground storage and recovery on an annual basis of their water supplies. So that's critical, and I don't want the management plan to take that away. So I want to ask Natalie if she, you know, I can make a motion to ask the department to take that out, or we can get Natalie's commitment that she's going to work with those who have commented on this to fix this, or at least to have some discussion about it, so we can come up with something that's going to work for everybody. If we don't end up with something that's workable, I can see a number of the cities objecting to this when it's promulgated, and it being a big problem for the department going forward, and it would taint all the hard work that they've gone through over all these many years of putting this plan together, which, as everybody has said, is a great plan. There's been a lot of work. So I throw that out there to Natalie and the group to give us a response to that. Will the department commit to working with those who have commented on this issue? Then the alternative is I'll make a motion, and I don't know where if the motion will stand, but that's the alternative. So I'll leave it at that.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Dave. So we certainly, as always, are committed to continuing to working with stakeholders on their questions and concerns. We did incorporate similar language to this in the Tucson Fifth Management Plan, which is moving forward with its promulgation process. So despite Phoenix being a little bit later in that kind of timeline, we are working to adopt similar language in other places. So I would just want to emphasize kind of the shortness of that timeline with regard to the other AMAs. That said, I think we're open to hearing whatever motions or whatever recommendations the GUAC would like to make with regard to that.
Well, okay, in light of that, I think I have to make a motion, Frank, to,
Mr. Roberts, may I interject just one clarification? This is Carol Ward.
thank you, Carol.
And I just want to throw this out before, as Natalie said, any motion you want to make, of course, is fine, but I want to clarify that this does require that we put together a report, evaluate what areas of shallow impact are, and we will be working with stakeholders to do that. And we decided to go that route because that gives us adequate time to make sure that we have defined this clearly and that we are not implementing anything with unintended consequences. Of course, the last thing we want is to eliminate annual storage and recovery. And, we certainly wouldn't do that. So to the question of, will we be giving this time? Absolutely, we will be giving this time to work through. That's part of what we built into the management plan. And I would suggest too, please give me a little bit of clarification if you are making a motion that are you asking that we remove any of the new language that we've included, or are you asking us to remove the language that has been in there since the third management plan? That would help clarify for us what it is you're looking for.
Well, my understanding is that it would be the language that is currently in the plan.
Which includes the language from the third management plan.
Right, correct. So, and I understand it was in the third management plan, but nothing actually ever occurred with respect to that. And I appreciate very much that you all want to study this. It seems to me that if you put the regulation, so to speak, in the plan and then you study it, and the study turns out that you need to take it out, what happens? What happens in that regard? The other way to do this is to study it, come up with a reasoned approach based on what the study says, and then amend the management plan to reflect what comes out of the study.
So it's one thing, and I thought the main point is being made is that principally the cities, but other entities as well, are concerned about any enforcement of this as a result of changes in the fifth management plan. Do we really need, I worry about backing up and removing even an unenforced item from a previous plan. I just worry about the image of backing up completely and saying, well, we're not even going to ever focus on this. I think that's what that says. But I have a lot of sympathy for there hasn't been enough study as to how this affects people's ongoing operation. And I have a lot of sympathy for people saying, look, what's here really isn't workable. But to really just back off of something that's been in place, I don't know, what is it, 10 years? I don't know how long since we adopted the third plan.
It's 2010.
2010, so it's 12 years. Good guess. So I really worry about backing up, but I think there is a lot of evidence that we're not quite ready or we don't really know what it is that we want to enforce. And that until we get a definition and an explanation of enforcement that is near an acceptable point, that it doesn't make any sense to go ahead with enforcement. But I think it's hard to go and take off something that's been on the book for 12 years. And it's been on the books in an unenforceable way. Not only is it not, not only is it not
That's the
been,
material point.
it's kind of unenforceable.
Well, I don't hear Dave, Frank, asking to throw it away. He's asking for more input from the community and work with the department. And
I support that.
nobody wants to shut down the plan completely. Let it go forward. Let's just set this component out, put it in this new working subgroup, whatever it was that Natalie talked about, put it in there, and then bring it forward and amend it into the plan at a little later date.
Yeah, Natalie just pointed out, Frank, that it was actually 20 years ago that that was put in place. So it's been a long time. We're still operating under the
Now's the
Fair Management
time.
Plan, by the way.
So it's getting late. In fact, it's getting past late.
Yeah.
Does somebody want to try a motion?
No.
You want to do a motion on this point only? And then
Yes,
do a general motion saying move through the process, which includes further input and potential further modification? Or do you want to do it all at once?
I'm fine with what you just said there, Frank, relative to how to approach it. I think the plan, like we've talked about, is great. I think we should support the plan. There are a few things that I mentioned that I think from a wording standpoint in the plan ought to be fixed. I'm not going to make a motion on that piece, but on this, on the language that's in there relative to the shallow groundwater and future recovery and how it impacts annual storage and recovery, I just think we need we need more time before that goes in sort of in the plan as final, because I want to make sure that the water users can work within that plan, within that regulatory framework. That's all.
Do you want to? So
that's my motion. If we can craft that as a motion.
Let me let me see.
Sorry, Mr. Fairbanks. If I could provide just a small point of clarification. So part of the reason that we were really hoping to be able to include this in the 5MP is one, we don't have any statutory provisions for management plans after the 5MP. But also we do have a process in statute for modifying the management plans, but it's a complicated process. It's basically a full new adoption of the plan, and you saw that timeline I laid out earlier. So certainly the preference on our side is to be able to include this in the 5MP, if at all possible, by continuing to work with stakeholders, because I guess kind of looking to the future and looking at time demands on the department and that type of thing, I think if it's not included in the fifth management plan, I would personally have some concerns that it would ever actually be incorporated under any kind of modification.
Thank you, Natalie. I guess my clarification of that would be that you're not going to promulgate the fifth management plan for the Phoenix AMA until August, September, whenever it might be. And so the idea is between now and then that you work with the community that's commented on this issue to see if we might come up with better language that's going to work for them that does get promulgated in the fifth management plan. And it may be that the language you have works with some minor tweaks about it. That's all. That's what I'm asking for. It's just more time to work through that before you promulgate it.
You made a motion, I think, Dave, and let me see if I can restate it. And then you can restate what I restate. Okay, so the motion would be, it's the sense of the committee that the provision on recovery of water in shallow groundwater situations needs significantly more work, and that in its present form does not appear to be effective, and that we would urge ADWR and the cities to work together collectively to find a resolution before promulgation of the fifth plan.
I'll second that motion.
No, you have to make it. I was trying to say what you said.
You just made it perfectly, so I'll just second it. Thank you, Frank.
Okay,
I would like something though amended in there.
sure. What?
Well, Frank, I'm trying to think where you said where the department works with the cities
Or
to get this right. I want it to be with interested. Okay,
Go ahead.
all interested parties. Yeah.
All interested parties. Okay, so the motion is amended to, the good point, Stephen, that works with all interested parties, not wherever we said cities or municipal or water providers. Further comments or discussion of the motion? Questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed signify by saying no. I hear no no's. I take it that it's unanimous. Rory, you're still in?
Yes, yes, I am. Yes.
Steve Cleveland, are you still in? Okay, the vote was 4-0 in favor of the motion. Okay, could we have a general motion that would recommend to the director that they proceed with the process of implementation that includes further input and, of course, changes as needed, as determined by the staff in that process? Is there a motion? No?
Well, Frank, you just made the motion, but I will make that the motion that you just mentioned relative to asking the department to proceed with promulgation of the fifth management plan in accordance with the schedule that they laid out today, and in consideration of the issues that we discussed regarding the recovery of stored water in shallow groundwater areas. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second it. Rory.
Yeah, we're really seconding what Dave just stated. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Signify by saying nay. The motion passes. Rory, you were in, right?
Amen. Yes.
So it's a 4-0 vote with Steve Cleveland absent. Okay, so as far as I know, that's the end of that item, and we move hopefully quickly into call to the council. Is there anything that you would like discussion on at future meetings or any other issues that you would like to bring up, members? Hearing now none, call to the public. Is there anybody online that has something important to say or add? Hearing none, have a nice little script to read. Okay, unless there's an objection, I will be adjourning the meeting. Hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned at 3:35 p.m. Thank you very much, committee members. We made it.
Very well done, Frank. Thank you.
Good job, Frank.
Thank
I
you,
messed
Dave.
it up, you
Thank
guys
you all.
saved me.